Like Han Solo, Jank It Up Fuzzball is no good to me dead. Hey everybody, welcome to Jank It Up Fuzzball. I'm your host, Brian. Where were we? It's been 3 years since the last episode of Jank It Up Fuzzball was released, and I honestly never thought I'd release another episode again. I was happy with it, I enjoyed doing it, but I just didn't think podcasting was still in my future. And yet here we are. So let's talk about that. I podcasted from 2018 to about 2021 for Star Wars Destiny, right? Jank It Up Fuzzball was created to document my very casual kitchen table escapades with Star Wars Destiny. That game died in 2020, and subsequently, Jank It Up Fuzzball was put to bed in 2021. Fast forward to 2023, and FFG announces Star Wars Unlimited. Most of the reaction was about how bad the art was, which is completely silly now. That's fine. Obviously, fool me once, shame on me. I was not really interested in jumping back into an FFG Star Wars game. I was very cynical about the whole thing, and I kind of stayed away from it. But as the months went on and more cards were released and gameplay videos were released, and some of my podcasting peers from the Destiny days started jumping in to Unlimited coverage, I started getting a little more serious about paying attention. Then, at some point, I must have reached a tipping point because I said, hey, this actually looks like it'd be a lot of fun. And then the question began, how should I jump in? Should I bring, do I want to bring Jank It Up Fuzzball back? And the answer was no, I really didn't. But it did look like a lot of fun. And I thought, if I'm going to play it, wouldn't it be great if I created a system that would help pay for my hobby? And I had the idea of creating a website dedicated to supporting just the players of this one game, Star Wars Unlimited. So I wanted to become a retailer. Easier said than done, but that's okay. I reached out to Asmodee in early November and they shot me down because I didn't have a brick and mortar store. That's okay. I persisted and pitched them my vision of a site that was part storefront, part content hub featuring articles, maybe eventually podcasts, maybe eventually videos, all about Star Wars Unlimited. And eventually they said yes. So right around Thanksgiving forward, I threw together a website. I say threw together, but I worked quite a bit on it, getting it to look the way it does. And Deploy Your Leader Gaming was born. So Deploy Your Leader is my storefront / content hub. And Jank It Up Fuzzball will be hosted on YouTube and also inside the content section of Deploy Your Leader. So if you're one of the people that have ever ordered something from Deploy Your Leader, know that Deploy Your Leader Gaming is me and I am it. I'm also Jank It Up Fuzzball, but it's the same person. It's just me here in my house. I've fulfilled over 160 orders of Star Wars Unlimited product, singles, and accessories so far. Really grateful for the response to the website. And thank you again if you ordered something from me. The irony of this situation, of course, is that my initial order from Asmodee was 8 cases, so 48 boxes of Star Wars Unlimited. I set aside 1 box for me and 1 for my buddy Greg, who, if you followed me in Destiny, you recognize he's my neighborhood friend and kind of my foil for all my adventures in the card game. And then I sold the rest. So 46 boxes either went out or were broken for singles. And all of a sudden, you can't get any more product. Like Asmodee will not ship me any more product, in part because I'm not running organized play. I'm not a storefront. So between a few pre-releases and some extra packs and the 1 box I have less than 2 boxes worth of cards in my personal collection, and I have no way of getting any more until the restock, probably in the holidays. Lesson learned, right? Maybe skim my quantity off the top before releasing it in the wild, but I'll get better next time. So I had the store. I immediately reached out to some podcasting friends from the Destiny days, the Golden Ice podcast and Roll On Gaming. I recruited them to write some articles for the site. And we just posted our 20th article, 1 a week. So for the last 20 weeks, we have released at least 1 article for your enjoyment. I love having the myriad of voices we have and authors. And we also brought in twin sons. And so it's been going great. These are wonderful collaborations with them. And I hope you had a chance to read some of their work. They're a lot of fun to put together. And that will continue for the foreseeable future. So why am I here talking to you as Jank It Up Fuzzball? Exactly. Why? I still, even with the store, even with the articles going out, I still didn't have the need or the itch or the drive to get behind the microphone again. And then in February, the Star Wars Unlimited celebration occurred. So FFG invited a whole large group of content creators up to Minneapolis to get their hands on the game a couple of weeks before release. And obviously, social media was flooded with photos and videos and polls and all this great stuff. And the FOMO was real. It was very, very real. I was lucky enough to go to Star Wars Destiny Worlds in 2019, and I did pretty well. I had a lot of fun meeting some of the people that you only know through podcasts and whatnot. And that was awesome. So the thought of maybe having that same opportunity to do that with an unlimited group is very exciting. Now, I am not a competitive player. I am not a great player. I am routinely beaten by Greg. Greg is a much better player than me. So I don't think I can ever win my way into one of these Worlds events. But, maybe through a content creator, there's an opportunity to do it that way. And so I decided, after a 3-year hiatus, to come back and bring Jank It Up Fuzzball. Things are a little different now. As you'll see, or as you can see, this is going to be a video-forward podcast. So it will always go on YouTube, on the YouTube channel for Jank It Up Fuzzball. It will also be available audio only for any of your podcasting needs. So it should be on all the platforms that way. And then I will post kind of short synopses and some images under the content section of Deploy Your Leader. And we're back. It's taken me about 2 months to get my act together and start to learn about the video side of things, as opposed to just, recording audio and then going into GarageBand and edit it. I'm using some new software. So hopefully that should all come together well. If you're brand new to the concept of Jank It Up Fuzzball, then like I said, it's my adventures in this game, in Star Wars Unlimited. And it's, my janky builds eventually and kitchen table. If I go to some events, I'll certainly talk about that. But a lot of it is just my escapades throughout Star Wars Unlimited. And I do like jankier stuff. I love like sealed and limited. I think that's a lot of fun because in those formats, you get to play cards that normally never see the light of day in competitive play. And so that's where we're going to start out, I think, for this first episode. I want to tell you about some of the early events I went to and how that's going with the cards I have. And it should be a nice beginning to whatever the future holds for Jank It Up Fuzzball and myself. So let's dive in. Hopefully, many of you played in pre-release events, and I did the same. I live in Houston, Texas, and so I went up to one at Kingwood Hobbies, that's north of town. And then later in the weekend, I went down south to Montag's Games in Pearland. So it was really awesome. Kingwood Hobbies was my first pre-release event, and my very first pack that I ever opened for Star Wars Unlimited, I pulled a Command legendary card. And that just kind of set the tone, right? It was like, it's amazing. I ended up not playing it that night because I built something else. That was great. And in one of my prize packs, I pulled a Luke Skywalker unit. So I was on top of the world, even going about 500 in the games. That was awesome. No one pulled a showcase. So, you're always wondering, is this going to happen? Who's it going to be? Every pack you open, you're like, am I going to pull, a Vader or a Boba, a Luke? Am I going to pull a showcase? But we didn't have any that first night at Kingwood. At Montag's, we had 3. So that was super exciting. Obviously, I didn't pull one. I would have been crowing about that before now. But it was exciting for those that did, certainly. And I had a good time at Montag's. I think I lost more than I won, but it was still a lot of fun. There was a good crowd. Even a few familiar faces from the Kingwood event were down there, and that was great. Greg was supposed to go with me to the Kingwood event, but unfortunately, he got sick and just didn't feel like going, and I totally understand. And so I took his pre-release box home with me, and I gave it to him, and then he cracked those and built a deck and came over one day, and he built a Chewie Command deck and just wiped the floor with me. I was playing the same gen I think I played at Kingwood Hobbies, and he stomped me bad. So I switched the last game. I switched to Darth Vader, and I narrowly escaped with the victory with a different deck. But man, Chewie was force in limited play. He's just such a big body once he gets out there, and it's hard to kind of punch through because, the more you punch him, the stronger he gets, and he's Sentinel and all those great things. So Chewbacca, you'll hear, is kind of a theme throughout what I'm going to talk about here today. After that one night playing with Greg, I decided to go to a draft. I've never been to a draft inside a game store. This game, Star Wars Unlimited, was built with draft in mind. So I thought there's no better opportunity than to go and see what it's all about. So I went back down to Montag's one Sunday, and there were 25 players. That was awesome just to feel so many people there. We had 3 different tables, people, cracking packs and passing, and no showcases this time. But, there were some Boba units and a Darth Vader unit and some other notable cards that were pulled. And it was just fun. There's always electricity in the air when you have that many people in the room and they're all cracking packs. I will say that before I dive into my deck, just before that, we published on Deployer Leader an article from Scott from the Golden Dice podcast about pre-release. I guess it wasn't just before that, but in the weeks ahead, and how to build a deck for pre-release, things you need to think about. And that was on top of my mind because some of the suggestions from Scott were like a 3-to-1 unit to non-unit ratio in your 30-card deck. Obviously, look for some space units. You don't want to be caught cold without having any space units. Look for removal and look for bombs. And that was pretty good. That was helpful because as I was sitting there with cards being passed around, I was mindful of, I should probably take this card because I need more removal or I need a space unit. And that was really helpful. And I think it certainly helped me in building my deck. So we cracked our 3 packs, we pulled our leaders out, and one of the 3 leaders I had was Boba Fett. Now, he's a common. I think I also pulled a Han Solo, which is a rare. But up until that point, I had not cracked a Boba Fett for my personal collection. I've cracked all kinds of cards for the store and multiple of every card you can imagine. Yes, it's been in my room. It's been here. But my store collection and my personal collection are 2 different things. They do not commingle. And so I really wanted a Boba Fett. And this was my opportunity. So I took Boba. I think out of the next 2 cards that were passed to me, I took Sabine just because I wanted to make sure I had a hero and a villain, not knowing what the cards would be for the draft. So I wanted to at least cover those 2 bases. And lastly, I was passed an IG-88, which was fine with me because that means I have 1 yellow character, 2 red characters, 2 villains, 1 hero. I was pretty happy with that. I knew that if I wanted to go yellow-red villain, I could play Boba or I could play IG-88. I think we could all agree there's a preferable choice there, but that was good to have those, knowing that I could swap leaders should I want it. And then the drafting began. So, you pass a pack or you open the pack in front of you and you look through your cards, choose one, and then you pass the rest. And that goes around until the entire pack is extinguished. And then you go to the second pack and you repeat that, passing the other direction for the second and then back the same way you did for the first for the third. I pulled a couple of rares. Usually you look at the bombs first and see if there's anything there. A couple of rares I pulled was Jabba the Hutt. Again, I didn't have a Jabba in my collection. I thought it was pretty cool to have. He's a big body, 2/8. And then I also pulled I Had No Choice, which is a rare. It's a trick. It's cunning villainy. And if you're like, what card is that? It's 7 cost. This is why you probably never thought about playing it. But choose up to 2 non-leader units. An opponent chooses one of those units, return that unit to its owner's hand, and then put the other on the bottom of its owner's deck. Again, I felt like, hey, let's throw it in there and see what it is. And it was a rare, so I took it. I also took a No Good For Me Dead, which is a fun little card. It makes you exhaust a unit, one of your opponent's units, and then they cannot ready during the ready phase or the regrouping phase. And so it's a nice thing to lock down. Next pack came around, and yes, I grabbed some things. I was mindful to make sure you get space and other things. But then, I'm going to show you this card because it's beautiful. Hyperfoil No Good For Me Dead. Sorry, No Good To Me Dead. Let me pronounce it correctly. I just thought, wow, that's a sexy card. And then all of a sudden I had 2 of those. And I was pretty excited. Something that happened that was very neat was the person to my right, because I believe we were passing left, he opened his pack and he had 2 legendaries, which is awesome. So I knew the pack was coming to me. So I was guaranteed a legendary, which was nice. He took a foil aggression and passed the rest to me. Mace Windu was the legendary. So I took it, did not make my deck that I was playing with, but it's still, I'm not going to pass up a legendary. So happy to have that. And the last pack was another No Good To Me Dead. And I just couldn't resist. So I took that. I had 3 No Good To Me Deads in my 30-card deck. So 10% of my deck was No Good To Me Dead, which was, I thought, pretty exciting for me anyway. You'll see my deck behind me here, and I'm going to post it. I'll post the link in the YouTube description. I'll also post it on deployerleader.com. But you can see I had a nice spread of 1-cost units. I had some removal. I had 2 Force Chokes, which was nice. I had 3 No Good To Me Dead. I had 8 different space units, which is pretty fancy, and lots and lots of units. That was the plan. I had some heavy hitters, including Ruthless Raider. I had Bounty Hunter Crew. I had a couple of Bosks, so 2 Bosks, and I had an AT-RT. I think that's the one in the forest on Endor. But so some good stuff there. And I was happy. And it was time to play. I threw my deck together, put it in sleeves, and we paired off. And I got to play against the youngest competitor there. He was probably 9 or 10 years old, I would guess, from what I remember. And his dad was there and his older brother was there as well. He was the one that pulled a Vader. And I was very happy to see he was not playing a villainy deck. So I was like, okay. But he was playing Chewbacca, which gave me a little PTSD from my previous games with Greg. But I had an idea of what to do here. And in that article I referenced that Scott wrote, he also talks about gripping removal for the leader, like saving it for the leader. Now, gripping is a word that I'm too old, right? So it's just like, hold on to this card is the way I interpret it. But it's fun to say gripping, I guess. So in my opening hand, I had a no good for me dead. So I just sat on it until, my opponent reached 7 resources, deployed Chewie. I immediately threw down no good to me dead. So that exhausted Chewie. Chewie has Sentinel though. So, I had to slam into that. And I had my Boba leader out at that point. So I threw Boba into Chewbacca. Boba survived, which was nice, but he did 4 damage to Chewbacca. My very next action, I used Force Choke and killed off Chewbacca, sending him back into the leader zone. And I was pretty happy with that. So I had defeated my nemesis from my house when Greg just totally stomped me with Chewbacca. And I was really pleased with myself. The dad, as we were winding down our game, the dad came over and kind of looked at the board, looked at his son, looked back at the board and asked, is your Chewbacca already dead? And the kid just shrugged his shoulders and, yes, I felt a little proud about that. I'll admit, I felt a little bit proud. And it was good. I ended up winning the game. I went 1-0. That was awesome. Not that I take any joy in beating up on a 9 or 10-year-old, but I was happy to get a win and move on. The second deck I played against was a Leia deck. I believe it was, I wrote down Green Leia, but I don't think that's right. But it was a Leia deck from a player. His name was Gareth. He was just kind of picking up the game, and so he made some misplays, and I was totally fine walking some of these back because I'm a casual player, and this is not a competitive event. And so he played Heroic Sacrifice, not appreciating that you actually have to defeat the character at the end because they are sacrificing themselves. So I'm like, hey, why don't you take that back, do some other things? And he made another tactical mistake in that he really did not have any space units, very few, and I had 8 in my deck. So the game basically turned once I had 3 or 4 space units, and he could do nothing about it. And it kind of went downhill for there. So I won that one. We finished up pretty early. I gave him some suggestions. We looked through the cards he drafted, and I said, hey, let's put some space in. Let's do some other stuff. And I was happy to see that in his 3rd round matchup, he won. So I was very happy for that. It felt good to help someone out and say, hey, make some suggestions. That was good. I'm on top of the world at 2-0. And then I meet up against Renee. Renee's someone I was talking to before the event got started. Super nice guy. He had a mono green Tarkin deck. So yes, Imperials, Imperials, Imperials everywhere. I made the worst play I made all day in this game, and it cost me dearly, and I've learned from that. And let's talk about what that was. I played Jabba the Hutt because it was in my hand, and I thought it was cool, and he's a big body because he has 8 health. He reads, when played, search the top 8 cards of your deck for trick event. Reveal it and draw it. Put the other cards on bottom of your deck in a random order. I honestly didn't know how many tricks I had in my deck. I assumed I had a couple. Turns out I have 1. That's 7 cost 1 that I already talked about. And I didn't see it. So what that meant is I had these 8 cards that I had to put on the bottom of my deck. So things like ATRT and Bosk and Wampa, all these things that could have helped me fight back this Imperial surge were all just to the bottom of my deck. It was bad. It got worse, believe it or not, because Renee, to his credit, flooded the board. He even had 97th Legion out there that just kept getting stronger. And then he played Attack Pattern Delta. He also played a Maximum Firepower and a Strike True. He had all these great kind of pumps, and the game ended pretty quickly. I just could not do a whole lot. So great game by Renee, bad game by me. I was 2-1. I went to the final matchup, and it was against a red Chewie deck. So here again, my nemesis, Chewbacca, showing up. This was by a man named Nick. Again, a super fun game, a really back and forth. This is where the synergy of my deck really shone. Shone? It's definitely shown. Because, for instance, I had an early no good to me dead. I locked down one of his space units. And then, of course, after that, it can eventually ready. The card goes into your discard pile, or actually it probably goes in your discard pile the moment you play it. We just keep it on the unit as a visual reminder. And then it's in the discard pile, which is great. And so eventually I had I had another one. I pulled another No Good to Me Dead, and I played that on Chewbacca. So I was lucky to have one when Chewbacca came out. And same thing, I was able to kind of beat Chewbacca when he was down, right? So like, doesn't seem fair to like beat a dog when it's down, right? But that's the strategy. Like lock Chewbacca up so he can't get stronger and hit back. So that's what I did, and it worked out. So I got Chewbacca off the board. And what was awesome was I have the Bounty Hunter crew. So Bounty Hunter crew has ambush, and when played, you may return an event from a discard pile to its owner's hand. So I'd play that. I would retrieve a No Good to Me Dead back to my hand, and I would deploy that again on some unsuspecting, well, at this point, I'm sure he suspected it, but put it on a unit to kind of lock his offense down. Also, I had Bosk on the board, so playing that card dealt 2 damage to a unit. So it synergized all of a sudden really well. It was still a very close game. Very, very close. I managed to pull it out with a Ruthless Raider play. So I was within 2 of winning the game. We both had cards on offense. We both had plenty of cards ready for defense. But the Ruthless Raider deals damage as soon as it hits the board. And so it's kind of damage from hand in that regard. And that was it. That carried me to the finish line. So that was awesome. What a great game. At least I finally saw some of the cool synergy in my deck. It was a really competitive game, and I finished 3-1. The biggest surprise to come from that was that record put me in 4th place out of a 25-person tournament, which was amazing. Renee finished in 3rd place. He lost his last match, but of course, he should rightfully be ahead of me. And so I earned some store credit. I used that store credit to buy one of these soft crates. I sell these in my store, but I haven't actually opened one up and done anything with it, inspected it. But this is really cool. It has a place for your tokens, a box for your tokens, and it obviously holds your cards. So I got this X-Wing TIE Fighter version. It's really neat. I'm thinking about buying another one. I have some in stock at deployyourleader.com. Quick plug. If you haven't already figured it out real quick, that Deploy Your Leader is going to be a perpetual sponsor of Jank It Up Fuzzball. Once I have more inventory, I'm sure there will be a code to support the listeners of the program so they can get a discount at the store. So after that, a few weeks later, Greg and I each had our box. Rather than crack the whole box at once, we decided, or what I like to do, and Greg agreed, is that we would crack maybe 6 packs at a time, or 6, and then 12, and do some limited matches through that. That happened just this past weekend. And so I was feeling pretty good about it. I pulled like a Leia leader, and I had Tarkin, I had some other things, but I had an amazing spread of cards. So like I had some rebels, but not like an overwhelming number of rebels. And I really didn't have any good removals. So I was really missing the force chokes and the no good to me deads that I had in draft. And, Greg was doing pretty well. And then he got to his 6th and final pack to crack. And there was a Chewbacca leader, and I knew what was about to happen. So Chewbacca Red came, and it was brutal. My Leia deck could not hold up. It was not good. I'd do okay in the first 6 rounds, but once the 7 resources were there and Chewbacca was deployed, those first 2 games, I couldn't even get Chewbacca off the table. It was just disgusting the way he did that. Greg also had a lot of Sentinel and a lot of Grit with his red cards, and then Chewbacca. And I made some changes the last game. I pulled in some cards, even out of aspect cards, just to try to remove, and it was close. It was very close, but Greg still pulled it out. So for those scoring at home, because I know some of you are, Greg is now 5-1 lifetime against me. So yeah, that's kind of par for the course with Destiny, I would say. But that's okay. We're going to crack more packs and play again at the end of this week. And I'm feeling pretty good about that. We've already cracked the packs actually at Resume. And I have some good stuff, and I have some removal. So I'm feeling better about my chances. Most importantly, he did not pull a Chewbacca. So we'll see what he plays with. Overall, it's a great game. I don't need to tell you this. You know that Star Wars Unlimited is a great game. And if you're listening to this, maybe you're like me. Most of your games are at the kitchen table. Maybe most of your games are on the weekend at your favorite local card shop. Or maybe you are a competitive player, but you just need to give your brain a break. So you want to listen to the ramblings of a super casual player like me. Welcome. I am excited to be back. I don't know exactly the cadence for which Jank It Up Fuzzball will appear, but let's just go ahead and say there will be at least 2 episodes per month. And, if I get the hang of this recording thing and all that stuff, then hopefully maybe we can even increase that. Again, massive thank you to anyone who's visited or shopped Deploy Your Leader Gaming at deployyourleader.com. I really do appreciate that, right? That's a side hustle, but it's still nice to know that you're providing a service that people appreciate. And so I'm excited for Shadows of the Galaxy to get here in July. I'll be releasing pre-orders for that very soon. And then, yeah, it's a lot of fun being on the business side of things. But I totally get at the same time, I get the frustration of not having the product because, like I said, I only have a box. So that's a total fail on my part. I really should have set aside more for me. And I'll do that for Shadows of the Galaxy. Thanks for listening or watching. I'm excited to be back. In closing, let me just say a variation of what I would used to say, and that is play some jank, deploy your leader, have some fun. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.